we're back. Five Rings Daily. Day 13 just wrapped up a few minutes ago. And Duane, well, apparently we can't do winter sports correctly in Canada anymore. We can't beat the States in either curling or hockey. What's going on? Is tomorrow or today a national mourning day?
We did win 3 medals in the Winter Olympics last night. So I don't know whether we can't do winter sports anymore. I do believe, I'll have to double check, but I do believe we're still ahead of the U.S. in the medal count as well. They might have, they had a couple golds last night, so maybe they've equaled on the gold side of things. Yeah, I'm sure you'll tell us about that later on, but certainly in terms of total medals. Yeah, look, the hockey game was one that I think that a lot of Canadians that only watch hockey, that are hockey focused, are going to look at that and they're going to be disappointed by that. Certainly curling is the other one too, with the women already bailing out to the point that, well, we've talked about the Rachel Homan rink to death, so I don't want to belabor that anymore. But Kevin Coey's rink falling to the Americans, only the second time in the history of world curling, when at the World Championship or Olympic level, and the second time in over 20 meetings that Canada has lost to the United States. So certainly a shocking result this morning there. But look, things happen. Yeah, I wouldn't say the sky is falling, but certainly it's disappointing to lose that hockey game after the drive for 5 was on, and the last time there was a hockey team that was going for 5 consecutive gold medals in the Olympics, the Americans beat them too, and that was in 1980 with Miracle on Ice game against the Soviet Union. So there you go. The U.S. is the bogey team of anyone going for 5 gold medals in a row.
Yeah, no, and it was a fascinating game where you did see Canada go behind 1 goal, claw back, and tie it with like an amazing goal. And I was talking to my friends, and like, yeah, this is like a soccer goal. This is like a cross. It's like a header, and it's a goal, and it's 1-1. And then, of course, Marie-Philippe Poulin, maybe the most clutch women's hockey player ever in this game, at least at the Olympic level, gave the go-ahead goal. But a moment of lack of concentration in the third period with a breakaway with the damn Lamoureux sisters. One of them twins scored. Jeez, if I've ever seen someone play like Matthew Barnaby, it's the Lamoureux sisters.
There you go. Look, that particular moment, Canada broke on the 2-1 and were inches away from going up 3-1. They turn around with the stretch pass and get the pure breakaway, and she hit the net perfectly in that particular case. That is a moment of lack of concentration, but what I will say is that goal was coming. The U.S.'s speed was completely overwhelming the Canadians for the last probably third of the game anyway, including the overtime. But for the last 10 minutes of the third period, and certainly the entire overtime, Canada was on its heels, and that had everything to do with the incredible speed advantage the United States had. I thought that up until probably the 10-minute mark of the third period that it was a very equal game, a fascinating game tactically in terms of the Americans trying to stretch the Canadians with the speed, and the Canadians being very tactical in sort of, to use a soccer term again, playing a counter game essentially. They were giving up a lot of possession, but did get a lot of opportunity from the break back at that point. But as I said, there was just a moment where I think maybe those early penalties probably played a role too, where they tired the Canadians as much as they were trying to play that off on the broadcast as, it's us against the world and it's good. No, it wasn't. It tired out Canada's penalty killers, which also tend to be your best players, and they were tired. And through the overtime until the penalty, which was the correct call in overtime, I thought the penalty was, until that happened, which was Poulin just forced to play, it was all America. Like, it was the only way Canada was winning that game from about the 32nd point of overtime on until that penalty was by either a complete screw up by the United States or a shootout. I was thinking that from the get-go. And I think the Americans began to tire a little bit in the second half of the overtime, which is why they weren't able to sort of create as many great chances as they were earlier on. But they still, did Canada have, before the power play, a shot on goal in the overtime? I guess they had the as I just said, that 2-1, which turned around. They only had 1 or 2 shots in the overtime, and it was really Americans were the better team, and they were the better team going in, and they got the result finally, and it was only a matter of time, really. If you look back to Sochi, it was a great result for Canada and will be looked upon fondly forever, but it was 5 minutes of madness that completely erased the other 55 minutes of U.S. domination in that game.
One thing too, Duane, folks don't know, if you just listen to the Five Rings podcast, Duane and I do a daily soccer show, usually outside of Olympic time, called Soccer Today. And we look at the world of football with a soccer perspective, with a Canadian perspective sometimes too. And we're used to having soccer players with dual citizenship not choosing Canada. And well, this is following us all the way to the Olympics and to the gold medals and to the women's hockey United States and Canada as well. The Lemura twins, Duane, have dual citizenship. Yes, they were born and raised in the United States, but they do have the Canadian passport availabilities and possibilities there. They chose the States. It could have been different last night, Duane.
Well, there you go. Look. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's one of the great rivalries in the Olympics. It's unfortunate the rest of the tournament doesn't live up to this game. It really is, and we've belabored that as well. So I don't want to go down that road too much right now. But certainly the game lived up to its hype last night, and it did, turn. It was a unifying moment, not necessarily at the bars because it was a little too late. I mean, maybe out west, not out here. I mean, I briefly thought about it. Then I was like, thanking God I didn't, because when I went into overtime of the shootout, it would have been like 3 a.m. before I got home. So no.
Bars are closed anyways in Toronto at that time. Like, yeah, we're kicking you out. We can't stay open. But it's the gold medal game. Yeah, I can't. Sorry.
I'm guessing that probably the big sports bars here in Toronto probably stayed open till the end of it, but their staff probably wasn't too happy about it. Nonetheless, yeah, look, it was unified on Twitter. There was the quirks and people trash talking both ways. I mean, my Twitter feed is really, half American, half Canadian. So there's a lot of it back and forth. I was getting both sides of it there. It was fun. It was a fun game to watch. And at the end of the time, my last tweet of the night was just, oh, well, because really I can't, it's like, I was cheering for Canada. I wanted to see them win, not just because it would be funny to sort of bug my American friends. There's a bit of that involved too, but just because, I'm Canadian and you want to see the Canadian hockey players succeed. And these women are like household names in this country at this point, right? Too. A lot of the Natalie Spooner and Megan Augusta. Maurice-Philippe Poulin. Yeah. Exactly. These are women that we've known for multiple Olympics, and it was fun and it looked good for a while. And as I said, I thought Canada had a great tactical approach to the game leading up. The mistake they made, I believe, and I'll go back to this again, obviously they're not fast enough. I mean, I don't know if that's a mistake. That's just talent right now. And I think that the U.S. system has consistently for the last, if you look at the World Championship results, they're obviously been better for the last 8 or 9 years. Like there is a talent gap there, and the U.S. is pulling away a little bit, and I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is, because they just have pure numbers advantage, right? Maybe you look to improve the CIS, the university play here. I don't know. There's maybe some things you can do, but by and large, pure numbers sometimes just play a role. Other than that, and I complained about this in the first period. I'm not complaining with the referees. The referee was inconsistent last night, but Canada was also lucky to not have Philippe Poulin, kicked out of the game for that elbow in the head.
Yeah, that was a tough one too.
So yeah, but in that first period, what I felt was happening, and this is an old broken record with Canadian hockey, is that they were caught up in this frustration that the game wasn't being called the way that they're used to it being called and the way they like it being called, rather than going, okay, this is how the game's being called. We need to adjust our play. And they did after the first period, but they took those 4 penalties, and that took any momentum away, allowed the Americans to get the lead early on. Had they maybe played that period less in the box, where nearly half of the period was played with them down a person, maybe they're less tired at the end of the game and they're able to push back a little bit more, and maybe they have a little bit more energy on that power play at the end, which really was their best opportunity to win, when they had a couple pucks that bounced over tired sticks at that point. That's my theory, and that's just one thing. A lot of factors went in, but as I said a moment ago, I'll let you wrap up after this. The U.S. was just a better team, and they got the result probably they deserved.
Before we move on and talk about our medals of the day, Duane, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about, is curling. Canada will now win at least a gold medal or a silver on the men's side. They have to battle for the bronze against Switzerland. And on the women's side, they're not winning anything. So, is it time, because we do have a grueling process for the selection of the rink that will represent Canada on the women and the men's side. And that process is not unique. There's one shape or form of that process almost anywhere in the curling federations around the world. But our federation being so big and the membership being so big compared to others, that process becomes a bit more complicated and long and difficult and arduous. Is it time we rethink that process with the results we're seeing? Clearly, the world of curling is catching up to Canada. We used to say it's our game. Guess it's not anymore. Is it time we rethink how we choose the rink or how we put a rink together? And my hypothesis is it time we maybe create all-star rinks, and we maybe time to pick a guy here and there, create a team that we feel can compete at the highest level now?
Well, that will never happen in this country because of the politics of the game. But before we, get carried away with the world is catching up stuff, Canada has won 8 of the last 13 world championships on the men's side of the game. This is not exactly, and that's, I think, 6 different rinks or 5 different rinks that have won those too. So this is not a situation where they're in danger of never getting back on a podium again or something like that. I think what happened in this particular case is that maybe these 2 rinks just weren't having a good weeks, and maybe you might have been able to pick a better rink. In terms of the all-star situation, that's been talked about a little bit before. It's kind of what happened on the mixed doubles side of things in some ways, although John Morris does play mixed doubles, although he plays it with Rachel Hollman, so maybe it was lucky that she qualified in that particular case because of her issues. And Rachel Hollman has a history. It's a history that we had forgotten about because she kind of turned it around at the World Championship level, where she is the defending world champion right now. But she did have a history leading into that of not always doing well internationally when she got there. And there was thoughts that there might have been some psychological reasons for that. I'm not saying that she has mental illness issues. I'm saying that she has performance issues at a high level. And that's why, if you look at the coach that they hired, it wasn't a curling coach. Their head coach of the team was a sports psychologist.
And you had Chantal Bernard there to be the liaison with Curling Canada, basically.
Yeah.
And the alternate as well, by the way.
Yeah, well, and they had a curling coach there too, but they their head one, the one that they were looking at most often was someone to try and get their mental side of the game. And I think in some ways, in sports psychology, there is a concept called the inverse U. Not to get too technical about this, but the inverse U basically says, just put in simplest terms, that the more that there's a peak level of effort that you can put forward until you start your performance, which has your performance go up in a U form until it gets better and better and better and better. But there comes a point where your performance, or your effort, I should say, gets so intense, so focused that your performance starts to drop. And it's a psychological, like a sports psych concept. And I think that they're kind of a walking example of that they get themselves so worked up in their own head that their performance, they start to outthink themselves in their performance. It's just squeezing the broom too hard, squeezing the stick too hard stuff is what exactly that is. And I think there's a bit of that happening with Rachel Hollman. But to get back to your main point, I do think they need to tweak the trials a bit, and I think they come a little too quickly, or a little too soon, I should say. Close. Let's try this for a third time. It's early or late. I'm not sure what it is.
It's both. It's both.
It's
both early and late.
Yes, it's too close to the Olympics. The rest of the world, as you say, is good. There are a lot of good rinks in the world that can beat Canada on any given day. So to require these Canadian rinks to have peak performances twice within basically 8 weeks is a lot to ask. And if you look at the way Scotland, for instance, like the Team GB is selected, they just look at an overall performance over the 3 years and go, that you're our rank. That would never fly here. The European teams, so that's how they pick that team to go to the European Championships. The European teams then go through the European Championships, which happen in the fall, like earlier than the Canadian trials. But that isn't quite as intense because there's multiple teams qualify, right? So, Italy got through in the men's side, and they're not really a traditional team at all. So it's like the top ranks don't really have a lot of stress at that point, whereas the Canadian trials are like intense. They're more intense than the Olympic trial. There are the top to bottom, like the last place rank at the Canadian trials really can medal. I mean, people that are listening internationally may go, well, you might only get one bronze here, and you're right, but they're interchangeable in many ways, right? So the intensity of that is crazy. So So to have them have to go through that process and then immediately go to play a field which has gotten better, I think maybe you need to look at either having the Olympic trials as the final event of, like, to use this quadrennial as the example, maybe the Olympic trials would have been last April, so that you have this entire season to prepare. That's, I think, what they might need to do. And then that would also allow, that has the double bonus of allowing the this current season, the 2018 season, on the the Scotties and the Brier side of things, the Canadian men's and women's championships, allows them to, like, have an open field where they're competing pure, and you're not having a winning team have to go out because they won the trials, right? Which is something that can happen too. So yeah, that's maybe what I would do there. I would look to tweak this, and I think you need to look at it. If you're curling Canada, I think you can't just go, "Oh, it was fine, it was just bad luck," which I'm hearing some of on Twitter anyway. I think you have to go, okay, well, let's evaluate this so that this doesn't happen again.
It's not just bad luck in a way when you look at how games been playing. And I really got into this curling tournament, and we'll get to our bronze, to our poutine medal in a second. But Duane, when you're looking at how differently certain skipper were playing games, how John Schuster of the United States like to leave rocks in the house and deal with them, and how other, like Kevin Covey, likes a cleaner house. He's a bit tedier. He likes things a bit more clean, and he likes to blank ends and control this way. And just go back to that mistake, I think it was in end 7, where they were going for the blank and it overcurled and stayed in the house. And yes, it gives you one, but it gives the hammer back, and you're not necessarily in control of your destiny anymore, and you're not in control in even number ends, which turned out to be the fatal mistake for Kevin Covey. So you do have different type of play, and on the women's side is the same. If you look at Bin Yu Wang from China, she likes to play with a messy house as well. So it gives an interesting different type of curling. And if you're just focused on the national trial side here, you don't necessarily play that same type of curling, and your instincts are more your go-to shots are not necessarily things that you will do on a regular basis at this tournament. So it made for an interesting tournament, and at least it's time we ask those questions, or at least look at that process and maybe think of a better way, if it exists, to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game today, they were just out-curled at every position. They literally were out-curled at every position. That isn't a subjective opinion. That's an objective opinion. The percentages were higher and for every position at the American rank. And the Americans have just, subjectively were looser out there. And that suggests to me, again, to go back to this inverted U and this stress around the trial situation, that the Canadians were mentally tired. There's a lot of pressure for them, and there was a lot of pressure for like 2 straight months now. And to be in that situation where, you mentioned the overcurl, and the Canadians, both Canadian rinks never had their draws gone down all the entire Olympics. They were both struggling in draw weight, which is the basic, like, sort of, I don't know, but it's like putting in golf, I guess, would be the best example, right?
Putting the stone where it matters in the button at a certain given moment of the game, yeah.
And if you look, and I was thinking that midway through the Bonspiel as well, is that if you look at how many times Canada had last rock, which is decided in the round robin by draw to the button contest before the game starts, and it was probably like only 30% of the time, especially in the women's side. I think they might only had the last rock first maybe once or twice in the entire round robin. So they were really struggling with that draw weight. And as I said, again, it's like a golfer that has putting yips. Once you get them, that really screws your game up. And they were chasing a lot of times because they weren't quite as precise as they would have liked. And it ultimately, the big mistake Canada made in that game was giving up that steal of 3, or 2, I should say, whatever the steal was. I forget, 2 or 3. Which it was a steal of 3, which went from 2-1 up to 3 or 4-2 down. And that was a draw mistake where he was wildly under through the rock and didn't even make the house. So yeah, it was that was the error all day. And maybe is that mental? Is that, I don't know, but it's certainly there's a lot going on there to think about moving forward. But as I said, 8 of the last 13 World Championships still reside in Canada, so it's not like the game's in dire straits or something.
All right, let's move to our Putin. Wait, we have a special. I'm being told by our ghost producer here that we have a special medal here. We have a special Maple Poutine medal, Duane, for a Canadian athlete that demonstrated amazing ability to stand on his feet after days of not sleeping, days of drinking some adult beverages, and supporting teams from his home country, Scott Moyer deserves a special maple poutine medal for staying up probably all night, then going to the Canada and USA gold medal game, cheering against the referee, capturing everybody's attention on social media while doing so, maybe having a bit too much to drink, but who knows? We're not there. We can't judge. And then able to make it to the curling game versus Canada and USA and cheering on his team there too. What stamina. It's crazy, his stamina. I wish I had his stamina.
In Canada, there's back when Kevin and I were kids, I think that they were still probably rolling when we were kids. We used to have these things that appear on television called Canadian Heritage Moments, and they kind of get made fun of a little bit now.
I have it. Not cute. I wish I had it, but it's on my computer.
Yes, maybe we'll get that up for tomorrow or moving forward, where someone had put an image of Scott Moyer standing with his arms outstretched with a scowl on his face. He's yelling at the referee, if you know the context, with a beer in one hand. And I suggested it should be an image on a stamp. But it was a great Canadian moment.
And Patrick Chan next to him looking at him saying, dude, sit down. We're going to get kicked out of here. I can't handle being kicked out of here. I have to stay here. I'm nice. I'm not that type of person. We can't be kicked out. Sit down.
So Scott Moyer was completely throwing the stereotype of the sort of demure, passive figure skater on its ear last night. He was a bit of a aggressive hockey fan, so it was kind of funny.
Are you kidding me? And we were thinking exactly the same thing at that right time when that fifth penalty was called for Canada. Anyways, let's move to our actual poutine medal of the day. A great performance by a Canadian that we were not expecting. Skiing is not one of our forte, apparently, nowadays in the Olympics. And Valérie Grenier, bordel, has won well, it's almost a 1-6 in the Alpine combined, which is a difficult event. It's downhill and the slalom run. And she did great in the downhill, was able to carry that momentum to the slalom. And 6, not bad. When stars like Lindsey Vonn did not even finish the slalom course. It's a difficult slalom course. I'll talk about this later on. But Valérie Grenier, 6th in the Alpine combined on the women's. That's very good.
No, precisely. It was a bit... she had top 10 potential heading in, I think, but 6 was a little bit higher than people expected. She was able to get down a very steep slalom course, as you said, to put a good time down, was on the podium for a brief period of time, pretty late in the race. It would have required, a few big shocking falls for her to stay there, but to finish 6th was a great result. And what has been, again, and maybe a third straight disappointing Olympics for the Alpine team. Unlikely to medal at this point with really, I believe, only the one event left. So there are 2 events, one on the men's and the women's sides each. That's the team event. Or no, team events combined. Anyway, I'm, again, late, early, something. Regardless, I haven't really looked at the schedule for tomorrow yet. But but what I do know is that Canada has really struggled on the Alpine disciplines for multiple Olympics now, which is, really standing out in the juxtaposition of the rest of the team flourishing, because for a long time, the Alpine team was a real strength for Canada, where they had the medal chances, opportunities were there. And, it reminds me a little bit on the summer side of things, to make this Canadian centric for a bit. My medals are all non-Canadian, so I'll be able to make up for it in a moment. But, on the summer side, prior to this past Olympics, it's always been, even though Canada was doing okay at the summer games, they were getting medals in events that weren't really high profile, and the high profile events like track and swimming, they were struggling in. So it seemed, even though Canada was doing okay, it seems like they weren't. And in some ways, outside of Canada, where we're getting the attention on the Canadian athletes, obviously, I suspect that there would be a lot of people in the world that are surprised at how well Canada is doing in the medal standings, because to them, the Winter Olympics are the Alpine events. And they're not seeing Canada succeeding in the Alpine events or even competing in the Alpine events, but yet they have all these medals because they're getting them in what they'd call the weird sports, right? So that's something that disappoints me a little bit. And I don't know what the answer is there, because they own the podium system, which is what they use on the winter side. I believe it's been expanded to the summer side now too. They used to have 2 different ones. They've combined them, but It's been very successful in identifying medal contention and rewarding that with more financial backing, which in turn makes that program stronger. And you're going to see like an event tonight where Canada has the potential to sweep the medals on ski cross on the women's side. So it obviously works, but the downside of it is if your discipline struggles like alpine is, you get less funding. So it spirals, right?
It makes it even harder. Yeah, it makes it even harder and harder to achieve those performances because of either the diminishing funding or diminishing of the optimized training environment that led to the performance to begin with at the beginning of it. So
yeah, and I've always felt, last thought on the podium, that on the podium should tweak a little bit to identify the three main sports that they always fund at the same level because of their profile in the games, because profile matters, because the idea of funding these athletes has to do with, spirit and unity and, Canadian rah-rah-rahness, right? That's part of it. So those three main events are swimming, track, alpine. Those are the three probably highest profile events in the Olympics, I would suggest. So yeah, that I think that they should really look at that, and I would dearly love to see Alpine Canada, because that is my original love on the winter side of things, is watching, especially the downhill, watching ski racing.
Steve Poborski, correct?
Steve Poborski, one of my early heroes. I met him when I was about 7 years old. Yep, world champion. Anyway, yes, it was. I miss Canada being successful on the Alpine side of things, and they had a decent world championship last year, so there was some hope. But Eric Gay, his injury kind of made that hard, and here we are.
Here we are now with our wood medal. And how about you start with your wood today?
I don't want to be a cliche hockey fan, but I'm gonna say it's not the
refs?
Canada lost.
No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
I'm not gonna go with the refs thing, because again, I think I highlighted that already. And we did talk earlier. I made it my wood medal earlier in this Olympics, the inexperience of the women's side and that chicken egg sort of problem. But no, what I'm going to talk about is shootouts. Is this the best way to decide, world championships, Olympic gold medals? We see it in our other sport that we cover very closely too. It's a debate in that side too. Is like, for God's sakes, can we not just keep playing somehow to decide this on the field? But as much as I do think the U.S. was the deserved winner last night, it still both seems not quite as bad a loss from a Canadian standpoint. It's like, it's just a shootout loss. They lost the skill competition. And from an American standpoint, there's probably that nagging doubt that they still haven't beaten Canada at the Olympics on the ice in a real game, in a real situation. They won the skill competition at the end of the game, and that's something that I just think there's got to be a better way. Why don't they switch to 3-on-3?
Yeah,
do 10 minutes of 4-on-4.
Maybe 4-on-4 on that big of ice would be the equal of 3-on-3, and maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, well, they go. Well, they were 4-on-4 in the overtime. Obviously, they switched to 3. I would say do the first 10 minutes at 4-on-4 and then switch to 3-on-3. I guarantee you, there's going to be a goal at 3-on-3. So I think that's just, it's got to be a better way. And I do, from soccer, football is a very conservative game, so any international listeners will cringe at what I'm about to say here, but I do actually think that they should go to maybe 7-on-7 or something in extra time to make sure that World Cups are decided at least by soccer plays as opposed to spot kicks. But at any rate, that's a debate for the summer when we will have daily coverage of
there's
the
World Cup. Those damn 2-year stretch where there's always a Euro or a World Cup and an Olympic in the same year. At least it's not in the same month, so at least it's an upgrade.
Yeah, well, and at least this time, unlike 2 years ago when we launched the daily concept, we don't have two tournaments to cover at the same time.
Exactly.
So there you go.
At least they're not at the same time. All right, I'm moving to my wood medal, and my wood medal is the slalom course itself and the difficult conditions with the different type of gates. Well, not different type, but which is always the case in a slalom course. You have closer gates together, but with the layout of the course and the steepness at some part of that course, it makes for a difficult course. And we've seen world champion like gold medalists, when one of the favorites to have 3 gold medals in these very games, Marcel Hirscher, not even finish the course. Lindsey Vonn did the same when it was time to do her slalom in the Alpine Combined. And you have a lot of favorites. And I was looking at the men's, and I know it was not the best skiers at that moment, but for about 35 minutes straight, after maybe skier bib number 20, 3 out of 4 were falling, sliding, hurting themselves, missing a gate, just being lost on that course. Yes, it's due to the conditions and the wind, and as well as the light that were hitting the slope at the same time. It's all conditions, but that course made for the podium to be surprising, but not just that. It made for world champions, favorites, to not be able to finish that course because it had a bit different conditions than the skiers before. And I know that's part of the sport, but I think it's made a bit more difficult with the type of course that was laid on that steep of a slope. So the slalom course and the slalom competitions get my wood medal because I don't think it was necessarily fair for all the skiers, and we've seen surprising results throughout the men's and women's different competitions on that course.
Yeah. Slalom is always a tough one. You do often see some high-profile athletes go down. With Lindsey Vonn, it was unfortunate, really, for her. I thought it was like kind of it was both sad and fitting at the same.
She had 2 seconds ahead. She had 2 seconds ahead on the silver medal, just on the downhill. She was the fastest on the downhill by 0.75 seconds to the second person. It was her best downhill run in the entire week.
No, absolutely, and that's, I think, how Lindsey Vonn will look to think about her last run of her career. I don't know whether she's going to finish the World Cup circuit or not, but certainly, in many ways, symbolically at least, that downhill, going down and finishing with the green and being on top after the downhill portion of the combined was symbolically the great final moment of a great career. But it actually ended with her standing, kind of shrugging her shoulders halfway down the slalom run, with the TV shot quickly cutting away to the winner, the Swiss woman who won the competition. But great career nonetheless for her. As I said, but for a few injuries, Lindsey Vonn could have been retiring right now as maybe the all-time most decorated Winter Olympian of all time. But really, she was that talented at the peak of her career and had a lot of bad luck at the Olympics in terms of injuries and some freak results here and there. But
on the World Cup level, Duane, she's got 81 victories, missing 6 to tie the record, 7 to beat it. So if she finishes the season, 7 might be high, that number, but maybe at the end of this season and the beginning of next one, and she would be considered the best and the winningest skier of all time on the women's side on the World Cup level. So I think she might go to that. But I think it's still a good way to finish. And it was difficult, that slalom course. But
can I just shove in a quick little extra mini wood medal here?
Go ahead.
Watching
mini wood
short tracks. Yeah, mini wood. Watching short track this morning, I know that South Korea is the host, and I know that there's a lot of South Koreans watching this thing. But do you really need to cut to the two South Koreans stuck on the ice that clearly weren't going to get disqualified as the final turn happens of the race? You miss the finish to show two Koreans sitting on the ice. Yeah. So I'm giving a mini wood medal to the producer for deciding to so and same with the relay. The Koreans were like half a lap behind. They kept flashing to them. It's like, at some point you have to realize that they're not coming back.
Yep, no, exactly. They're not going to come back, and no, it wasn't a mistake by somebody else. All right, let's move to our bronze medal for day number 13. Go ahead with yours, Duane.
All right, my bronze medal is going to go to Team Schuster, who we talked about a little bit there. The United States in curling has not been in a world championship or an Olympic final on either the men's or the women's side since 1981.
Wow.
This is a long time before Kevin was born. I was before I can remember. So hey, that's the ancient history, not just old history. So
is it called antiquity at this point? No.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much. It's like a different era. Like it's like
it's
BC
different millennia.
and
That's
AD.
True. It's a different.
At any rate, it's it's before. Right, yeah, it's before most of the people I know in my life were born. So that's really a long time ago. So nonetheless, it's it really remarkable performance, and they've beaten all the top teams in the lead up. Now they have their toughest test ahead. That Swedish rink is a machine, and they would have been favored against Canada too. If you watched, because I was watching both semifinals at the same time, and what is a good Swiss rink was just torn off the ice in terms of the Swedes.
Poor Swiss. That steal of 4? I was like, they stole 4. And
then even when they were they're chasing the game later. They still managed to get another steal in there. No, that team Sweden is the number one ranked rink in the world right now, and they, although they didn't win last World Championship, they are very, very strong and are undefeated at this point and are fully deserving, and they probably will get a medal of mine after the gold medal game as well. But I almost gave them one today, but I decided to highlight the Americans as well because of the historic nature of it. And look, from a grow the game perspective in the United States, it's a big deal because the U.S. has always had this sort of like cute kind of fascination with curling every 4 years, but it's never goes anywhere because the American teams don't do very well at the game, so they kind of lose interest after this. But to have one win a medal for the first time, and play for a gold medal, and it's going to garner a lot of attention. They may even make the main NBC network for once. It's a big deal, and I think for a lot of people in this country that will be the sort of blessing in disguise that they take out of this curling bonspiel is that there's a lot of Canadians, particularly out west, that are passionate about curling and passionate about growing the game of curling that also have American roots and American interests that will look at the American success and say, okay, good, that's an opportunity for the U.S. curling to get stronger too, because they want U.S. curling to get stronger. Because ultimately, from an overall game perspective, if the game is like niche in the United States, it's going to struggle to get a global foothold because there won't be as much money attached to it. If they can ever get the game popular in the U.S., you can get that those Grand Slam events can get a little more money behind them perhaps, and maybe that will allow the game to grow even further.
Once Nike and Adidas starts fighting over sponsorship deals over broomstick and stones and clothing for curling, you'll know that the sports has made it in the United States. Let's move to, which is far, far away. Not too far. Can you imagine nice Nike brooms? That would be cool.
Sure. Although they aren't really brooms anymore. They're sticks with things you can rub the ice on. But yes.
Stick with something yellow on the bottom.
If you're internationally, you don't know curling before, they actually used to use brooms, like actual brooms back in the day.
Like, what's the effect of that? I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, all right, imagine I have like one of those straw brooms. I remember when I was a kid seeing curling and straw brooms. I was like, you don't even get pure contact on the ice. You're basically just rubbing stones out of the way. That's what you're doing. You're just making sure there's nothing in the path, but you're not creating a path.
Yeah, the game was much different. You can probably find on YouTube like highlights of like old World Championships back when they were using the brooms. There's a lot more debris on the ice, so like you'd get the stones would pick, right? Which means that's a term that means that they catch something and they stop spinning. And once they stop spinning, they stop moving naturally. And so it was like chaotic that way. But at the same time, they also they've changed the rules to increase scoring so that you can't remove stones until it's the 3-rock rule. In international, it's 4 rocks on the mixed double side of things. It used to be you could they put a guard up there and the team with the hammer would just take the guard off.
Yeah. And it 1-0 after each draw.
Yeah. Yeah, so they just look to make scoring was 1-0 2-1 would be the scores of games, right? So this is They changed that, and it's a much when the U.S. last was in a World Championship, that would have been the rule. So it was a different game in many ways.
All right, let's move to my bronze medal. My bronze medal is Kevin Rollins. Yes, he was one of my medal locks, and yes, he didn't get a medal, but he won one in my heart. I know I'm exaggerating, but watching the ski halfpipe competition in freestyle skiing last night, Duane, first of all, it was difficult to watch. Ouch, the amount of crashes on that halfpipe and the amount of athletes carried off this halfpipe was a bit too much and sometimes a bit difficult to watch. And Kevin Rollins was one of those athletes that didn't land one run in the entirety of this competition. But he came here with already a banged up knee, banged up wrist, hurt shoulders, basically a broken man, and still tried and landed hard. And it was difficult, but never gave up. Tried 3 times to just pass his first damn trick and wasn't able to. This man showed a lot of heart. And Kevin Rollins, if you're not following the action sports ski scene internationally, is one of the best snowboard ski halfpipe athletes. He likes to go high. He doesn't like to go downhill. He likes to go high. He likes to jump. And that's why he chose halfpipe. He's a superstar. Has his clothing line, ski line, brands, all the shebang, social media presence, millions and millions of followers and fans around the world. And for him to show this dedication, this amount of quote-unquote heart by trying again, even though it hurts, even though you might not have the strength in your legs to actually land your trick, You're still trying. And Kevin Roland, not only because his parents have a very good choice for names, is getting my bronze medal.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, that was it still remains. I found it fascinating watching that competition. How even 2 Olympics in now, they still maintain that sort of action sports mentality even at the Olympics, and I'm starting to see it slip away a little bit on the sports that have been there for a few Olympics now on the action side, but where they are putting safe runs down and things like that. But I found that in the half pipe competition last night that it was still like all or nothing thinking out there, right? Like, I'm going to lay down a gold medal run.
Yeah. Or nothing, and either going to be carried on people's shoulder for glory or carried on this ski mobile because I can't walk anymore. And
yeah,
it's a bit hard to watch. So I don't remember what the nationality. I think it was New Zealand or something. But he landed on top of the lip and didn't move, and then slid down the bottom. I'm like, ouch, and then you fall because you hit the top, but then you fall too. It's like, it might look like there's a slope there, but if you miss the slope, it's like falling 3-4 stories high.
Well, they're 15 to 20 feet in the air, right? Jeez. So it's the only other sport that has athletes that high in the air is pole vault, and they're landing in a pit. So
they're landing on mattresses because it's dangerous still to be that high in the air.
Yes, you're falling from 6 meters. That's like, I'm trying to think. It's about a story and a half. So
yeah, it's at least jumping 2 stories. Like, it's a story and a half, 2 stories. Yeah, depending. Yeah.
Yeah, you're jumping off your roof, your house, your house's roof.
Like, your 1 floor. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, crazy.
All right, it's insane. Let's move to our silver medal for day 13. Go with yours.
All right, Anna Gasser, the big air champion, Austrian, who did the most exciting thing you can do in the action sports is to not take a victory lap with your last run, but to actually be behind and come back and nail one and to win the competition with the final run. And she's a class of that field, a class of that action sport world. She did clearly have the best jump of the day with that final jump, and just a superstar of the game that of the sport, as I said, that has really she had a great moment of those games, and that's my silver medal today is Ann Gasser for her jump and her overall success in the sport.
It was difficult for both Canadians in that final. Laurie Blouin and Spencer Bryan both had difficulties just landing one of the clean. And Laurie Blouin, if you remember, she had a big crash in slopestyle before the competition. The competition was delayed, which gave her a chance to recover, take part in the competition, and win a silver medal in that competition. But in the big air, she had a few big crashes too, and it seemed very, very difficult every time she was getting up and trying to climb back those stairs all the way up to the big air ramp. You can tell she was having difficulties, and it wasn't necessarily easy for the Canadians, but Anna Gasser, it was an impressive jump that she finished the competition with.
Well, and the other thing too is Spencer O'Brien. She kind of, like I talked a minute ago, how a lot of these action sports are trying to go all or nothing. Spencer O'Brien kind of went the other approach last night because the women's big air had the two score format, which is unique.
2 out of 3. If they're different though, they have to be different.
Yeah, so she tried to sort of lay one up and to try and get a couple scores to set herself up for a big third jump, and she ended up falling on that second jump. So a tough one there, and she was one of the athletes that had a lot of attention in terms of the promotion and that. She was because of her story. She's from a tiny little community in Canada in the north, so she got a lot of attention outside of just her sport heading into this. So it was a bit disappointing there. Yeah, but a big competition, and tonight, oh my God, tonight's going to be mental. The big air tonight's going to be fun because you got ski cross and you've got which has massive, like I said, has the potential of a Canadian sweep if everything goes to.
If it goes to the three fastest skier in the women's ski cross were Canadian after the seed, which is just basically you go down the ski cross course by yourself, and the fastest time determines the seeding, which gives you a better placement in the gates, and it gives you the green bib, I believe. Or the red bib. Anyways, one of those bibs. That's what the bibs mean. It's the seeding for each heat. That then from the quarter, the eighth and final quarters, so on and so forth. Best two.
You can also pick your slot that you can.
I think that's what it is, right? You can pick your slot. Which one? Because we know that the one on the exterior are the worst one. The ones in the middle, depending of the first turn, and well, it's the loop and the jump and the drop. So basically, the middle ones would be the best line to give you an access to the interior of the first jump. Well, after the first jump, the first turn. I mean,
the thing with that course too, that I think about this as for myself as a skier. I'm a decent skier. Like I go down diamond runs. Like I can ski. But I look at that course and I go, yeah, I'd die on that thing. And I don't even think
I would kill myself.
Well, I'm not, but I might not, because I'm not sure I'd make it past the start, because you have to drop like 4 meters.
I would just drop and do the middle and the bottom. Like, oh well.
And then you have to go up that massive incline and immediately onto the Rollins.
Well, you saw that. You remember we'll get back to my silver in a second. But the ski cross men's final, when the Canadian and the Russian fell, the Russian had to literally climb a hill. Like, he was at the bottom, and then he's like, fuck. Now I gotta inch my way up this uphill. Then I gotta go down the little jump. I gotta climb that little bridge. Then I can go down.
Yeah, like I said, I think that would save me. I'd like drop and I'd like fall and I'd be, okay, I'm out.
I'll just go down in case somebody else falls and I can get an easy bronze like that Russian athlete. That OAR athlete. All right. My silver medal is to Marie-Philippe Poulin, the maybe most clutch hockey player in the Olympic history. Great story in 2010, great story in 2014, and it almost was a great story as well.
Almost had a hat trick.
Yeah, almost had a hat trick. Almost got sent off, but that's something else. Almost had the game-winning goal. If it would have stayed 2-1, it would have 6 minutes away from a game-winning goal. 3 Olympics in a row. Almost another gold medal winning goal. 3 Olympics in a row. Marie-Philippe Poulin from Beauceville. As she plays for the Canadiens de Montréal as well in the CWHL. Her entire body of work is worthy. The fact that she's now the captain, the heart and soul of this generation, is not necessarily the reason why I chose her as well. It's because she's carrying this damn team. Her level is above everybody else, and you can see how she thinks, and she makes everybody else around her even better. And that's why Canada made it up to this point. It wasn't necessarily as easy as always, and we're kind of lucky as well, but that the game is not at the level it could have been at the rest of the international level, because I don't want to say there's no evolution to the game, because that's not true. There's a lot of great players, and they're a better player now than ever was, but Marie-Philippe Poulin is an outlier, and there are not a lot of outliers out there, and she's the best outlier out there, at least for Canada, and she has been the one clutch player in gold medal games that always scored a goal. Literally.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, Laramee, you could put a lot of players from that. I chose not to highlight any particular player from the game or the American team. The American team could easily win the gold medal for the day too. And I mean, I think that because that's why I wanted to have this separate section just talking about that game today. I mean, and I want to make it clear that I'm not trying, by not giving them medals, I'm not saying that
it's not because we're bitter. No, exactly. We're not bitter. We don't care that much.
Although, we'll quickly, to finish, and Poulin, as I said, like, I mean, I had a great tweet ready to go had Canada held on to the 2-1 lead, because it would have been 3 consecutive Olympics in which she had scored the game-winning goal in the gold medal game, which is a pretty crazy idea. So I was going to write Sidney Crosby, you know those things, like it'd be Sidney Crosby, I scored the winning goal that won a gold medal. Philippe Poulin, hold my beer. Hold my beer. Hold my beer. That was going to be my tweet, and it would have got a lot of favorites. Trust me. Anyway, yeah.
Favorites sucks, though, because they don't make your tweets seen by other people. People have to retweet, all right? If you're on Twitter and you like stuff, nobody cares about what you like. Come on, retweet. Give us a bit of exposure.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's the way to go. I always thought that as well. Anyway, yeah. No, look, she is a treasure. She is the best Canadian women's hockey player right now. Arguably, they called her the best player in the world on the broadcast last night, and she's in that conversation. I don't think it's a slam dunk. Quickly on the women's hockey, this is almost another wood medal, but right now, and I think that it's time, having watched that game and having watched how remarkably entertaining that game is.
I know where you're going.
We have 2 leagues. Why the hell aren't they cooperating together, to grow this sport more?
And let them hit each other.
Well,
why not?
There's that.
They're tough enough. They're good enough for that. And
yeah,
they almost want to. Like, look at them play. It would be almost more safe in a way to include at least some part of contact into the game?
There's a couple ideas that I've had for a while. First off, the CWHL and the NWHL, they need to stop this little turf war because it's ridiculous. They're hurting each other by not cooperating. They have, 9 teams or 8 teams total between the two leagues. Combine them. You have a league then. You have the Clarkson Cup, which has been given away on the CWA. It's older than the American version. Make that your version of the Stanley Cup, and not to compare it to the men's game, but it's an easy comparison to make. So you have a cup that you're chasing. You can still, to save costs, you can play divisionally. So you're playing in the Canadian division and the American division, and have them play at the end for this championship and try and get a TV sponsorship to grow this game further, because at the top level, it is entertaining still. And by the way, lots of good tickets are available close to you if you live in a major city that has a women's professional hockey league, and they're not very expensive. So go out and support that game if you like. As you say, the body contact issue, there's a lot of women that resist that now because they proclaim that the sport is better without it. I disagree, because I think what it does is it creates a confusion, and it creates a confusion for the referees and for everyone watching, because they clearly are hitting each other out there. They're just like, what constitutes a legal body check versus an illegal body check? Just make it. You can still call boarding, for God's sakes.
Yeah, you
it's
can
not
still
like
call illegal check to the head and late checks. We're just saying you should be able, which is the idea behind body contact in the men's hockey to begin with. You should be able to at least try in a fair way possible to separate the body from the puck. Because you want that puck. It's about that puck. It's not about the hit. You're trying to get the puck. But by doing a hit, you might separate that. It's creating space and create that separation. Getting the puck, that's the idea behind it. And that would make maybe the play in itself a bit even more like hockey.
If you've ever watched footage of old NHL games from the 60s and earlier, it's not NFL on ice like it's evolved into on the men's side of the games. What has happened on the men's side is that they've allowed body checking to become something more than what it was ever intended to be. What I'm arguing is for the women's game to allow contact, but to allow contact in the way that the rules are actually written. You can't, there's this concept in Canada and Canadian, we're kind of going a little off kilter here, but in Canadian ice hockey, I played my whole life.
Finish the check.
Finish the check. Finish the check is illegal by the rules.
Yeah.
You can't hit a person after. Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's a ridiculous concept that continues to, to the point that you'd be called un-Canadian for saying that it shouldn't be illegal. Well, it shouldn't be. And they should evolve the men's game back to that way, too, to increase the speed. And because right now the NHL is dire to watch at times, because all it is slug and tugging and pulling and just a grind until you get, occasionally you get 1 or 2 good games there. Maybe, well, anyway, there's a lot wrong with the NHL that I don't have time for right now. But yeah, we're not asking for NFL on ice for the women's game to evolve to, but take the confusion out and allow, contact as written by the rules. So, which is already happening out there. Just don't make it so it's gray, because that drives me nuts watching a women's game. Why is that a call and that one isn't? Right? It's so inconsistent, the referee calls, and part of that is an inexperience on the referee side, and part of that's because they don't want to call 17 penalties, because you could, right?
On any given play, be like, all right, penalty here, why? Yeah. No, anyways, we both agree, and I guess you and I will change the entire sports world, and we'll make it better, I guess, because that's what we always do. But I guess it's just looking at things that maybe sometimes don't evolve in a direction which we anticipate, and maybe that's why we're reviewing things this way. All right, let's move to gold medals for day 13. Go ahead, Duane.
My gold medal goes to the Chinese 500-meter short track speed skater Wu Zhejiang.
Oh, he's so good. So good.
Yeah, so powerful. He broke a world record in the heat, which is generally when world records get broken in short track is in heats, because they're able to pull ahead and just put a pure speed race down. And
there's no tactics at the beginning, because you're just trying to get through. So you're not necessarily playing possum like you would in a final.
Yeah, exactly. And the power that he demonstrated there, and power he demonstrated throughout, where he just clearly was in short track. There's often a belief that anything can happen, but when he's out there really isn't a belief that you can beat him unless he makes a major mistake. And incredibly powerful to watch. And it was kind of the 500 meter men's was fun to watch for me today because it wasn't controversial like other sport track events have been during these games, and today was a little cleaner than the other days too across the board, which was nice.
So fast though, like Samuel Girard was in the worst starting lane, like it was in lane 4. You would say if it was like track, it was in the outside to begin. He can never catch up to the top 3. He tried. He went as fast as possible. Was trying to take a lane to cut inside to get more speed and accelerate. Could never catch up to the top 3 of that race.
Yeah, but no, for sure. Yeah, and he was 4th the entire race in the final, and that's a frustrating place to finish when you're in a final when there's 3 of the 4 make medal, right? But yeah. But it was a clean race, and Wu Zhejiang was an obvious, strong contender right there. And I'm getting to the point with this short track that the South Koreans are almost villains to me now, and maybe that's unfair to them. It's like
not just to you. That's short track for you now. That's the feeling I had in 2014. And you mentioned Wu Daixin. It brings me to 2014, Duane. A month after Sochi, the World Championship in Montreal, which will be the case this year too, so I might actually go cover them like I did 4 years ago. And remember, there's 3 names that caught my attention that year. Ariana Fontana, Fang Keishin. Fang Keishin is the Chinese speed skater as well. Very, very good, former world champion. Ariana Fontana, multiple medalists at this games. And Italian, yes. And Wu Daixin, the Chinese. He was younger even then, still young. So fast, so powerful. He's taller now, and even more. It's something you don't really see usually that often. He's a tall short track skater now, which wasn't the case 4 years ago, but still so powerful.
Precisely, and we should give I'll let you do your goal too, but I want to give a nod to the Hungarians for getting their first gold medal outside of figure skating in the history of the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, ever. Yeah, I was afraid for them for a second because if you look at that final, he kind of gave a push to one of the Koreans. I'm like, yeah. He's gonna get disqualified. He's gonna get Koreaned.
I was torn there because I thought that it would have been unfair to the Hungarians, but at the same time, because had they disqualified the Hungarians for that would have meant Canada would have won. Because there was also the Chinese pushed on. I was like, are we gonna double qualify? Because the Koreans would have got silver then because they finished behind the Canadians. So it was like, well, we get a gold medal, but it wouldn't be fair. So maybe we'll be sporting about this. That was a frustrating mistake. That Canada made in that they were controlling that race and they made one little mistake on the exchange and it was all done.
Yeah, they went from first to last, and they were
third. They got the bronze because the Koreans fell, but yeah,
that's true.
And Hemland got his 7th medal, or 5th medal, so that's good for him. Although they were clearly just disappointed. Anyway,
finished the games a lot better than he started them. Geez, I don't think there's not one event where he actually finished. He got disqualified in all his single event. The 500, the meter, and the 1500. But moving on to my gold medal for day 13, we're staying at the Gangnam Arena, Duane. We're talking about short track speed skating. Still, we're talking about Kim Boutin. It wasn't her time. 2018 was a time for her to get accustomed to this level of competition. PyeongChang 2018 was a time where her mentor, Marianne Saint-Gelais, was supposed to show her the rope and guide her under the wing. Well, that wing broke, and Kim Boutin took flight and never looked back. 3 medals later, she has become one of the darlings of Canada in PyeongChang 2018, and she capped that off today with a silver medal in the women's 1,000 meter with a great performance in a final that had 5 competitors instead of 3. She was first for a while. She looked like she could get gold. She finished with the silver behind the Dutch. But what a performance again for Kim Boutin. She has arrived. Never mind being there to learn. She's now there to win.
And she'll be having to move forward. The Canadian short track speed skating has this evolution of basically, passing the baton from, they're mostly Quebec skaters too. So passing
to another Quebec skater usually.
To another Quebec skater. And look at in today's edition of I Feel Old, it's the hugging couple from Vancouver. Were the old folks this time. The famous image of Hemlem winning the gold and running into then girlfriend's arms. That was one of the
Still
endearing
girlfriend.
images along.
Still girlfriend.
I think they're married now, aren't they?
No,
not?
they will be married after the games. That's
Okay.
after the games, after their Olympic career is over, they're going to be married in just a
All
few
right,
months.
so his fiance now. So there has been an evolution in the relationship. But yes,
Yeah.
they were so young and fresh-faced back then, and now they're like the old guys on the team. And it's like, oh God, man, it's been 8 years since Vancouver. That's so depressing.
Duane,
But anyway.
Samuel Girard was not even done high school when they hugged. So yeah, and now he's a gold medalist and a bronze medalist and 2-time fourth place. But Kim Boutin is getting my gold for day 13. Duane, I think it's time we take a look at the standings before we say goodbye for day 13 and be back tomorrow for day 14. The updated standings as we speak. Norway, 13 gold medals, number 1, tied with Germany, 2, with 13 gold medals as well. That's why Norway's first for the amount of silver medals, which is the second tie breaker. Canada, third still with 9 gold medal, not too shabby. And I'm going to get one hockey, which is disappointing. So I don't know if we're actually going to get one more. Maybe in women's ski cross tonight and big air. Those two events could maybe bring Canada to 11. But I don't think Canada will be able to catch Germany or Norway in the total gold medal. So third
Gold medal opportunity in the four-man bobsled as well. But
so that would be like possibility of 3 at the best. We'll see. If we
I'd
can
have
get
to
to
look
13.
carefully at the schedule, but I think those are the 3 biggest.
But Germany's gonna
opportunities
win one in bobsleigh for sure too. So
a medal,
medal for sure. We'll see if it's gold. But anyway, so 3 now, third with 9 gold medals. United States 4 with 8 gold medals. Netherlands 5th with 7. Duane, Netherlands figured out short track slowly but surely. They're gonna have a lot more than 7, and just because of speed skating. So Netherlands will always be a top 10, if not top 5, country in the Winter Olympic Games if they continue their dominance in the short track now too.
Real quickly, the other Canadian gold medal opportunity is in the mass start.
Yes, Alex Harvey.
Yeah,
world champion, the defending world champion.
Well, the Alex Harvey and the mass start speed skating as well. The world champion is Canadian as well.
Yeah, Laurie Blouin.
So there are 5 more gold medal opportunities.
That's true. That's true.
As the longer we keep talking, I'm going to find more.
Yvonne Blondin is the one speed skater who has been the world champion as well in the mass start. Yeah. Continuing, Sweden number 6 with 5 gold medals. France 7th with 5 gold medals as well. 3 of those are Martin Fourcade in the biathlon. Austria 8th with 5 gold medals as well. Republic of Korea, the host, with 4 gold medals in 9th position. And capping up the top 10, Switzerland with 3. I'm glad to see Switzerland. I'm glad because they took the spot of OAR in the top 10, and that makes me happy.
Fair enough, Kevin. Before we say goodbye, I want to quickly let listeners know a couple of things, housekeeping, before you can say goodbye for the show. Soccer Today will return on Tuesday. We're going to take Monday off just because we're going to need to rest a little bit before we get back to this.
We need to sleep.
Soccer situation. And in terms of the Paralympics, they're always a little tougher because they're harder to get coverage, but I will provide a preview which will come out next week, similar to the previews you had for the games here. And during we'll have regular 5 rings on Thursday. So during the Thursday of the Paralympics, we'll obviously talk Paralympics, and likely we'll set them up the Thursday before they start on March 8th, in case you don't know. So that's all I have to say. So on that note, Kevin, wrap the show up.
As always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. You want more Paralympic coverage? Let us know by contributing to the show. Patreon.com/Sports Network. With your donation and pledge, we can devote more time and research for the upcoming Paralympic Games that will take place in PyeongChang as well. And until tomorrow for day 14, as always, get some sleep and have a great Olympics.